Hello, I'm Rachel Siegel, the Executive Director of the Primavera Fund, and I would like to welcome you to our Sterling Masterclass online series. We've had to go online in response to the COVID-19 crisis, but we're very excited to be able to bring you this content in your homes every single week. So please check back for a new video on a new topic every Thursday at 4, and stay safe.
Hello, my name is Fabio Presgrave. I'm a cello teacher in Natal. Natal is in the northern Brazilian coast. It's a beautiful sunny city with wonderful seafood, wonderful fruits, really astonishing landscapes, but for the music history, it's a very important city also. It's the city of Aldo Parisot and Italo Babini. Two cellists really important in the history of cello playing in North America. Mr. Parisot was a professor at Yale for over 60 years, and so he had many generations of wonderful cellists. And Mr. Babini was principal cellist at the Detroit Symphony. They all studied with Babini's father, Tommaso Babini, and basically just studied here in Natal, because Mr. Parisot went to study with Feuermann at Curry's. But Feuermann died right after he arrived in the US. And then Mr. Parisot felt he didn't want to study with anybody else but Feuermann. But then he went on to have a wonderful career. And I guess this story shows us that they had an incredible teacher in Natal, and they worked very hard. They were very intelligent with their choices, and sometimes this is more important than being in a big fancy school. When you have the correct guidance of people who really care about you, you can really reach whatever you want, whatever you need. Of course, it's nice to be in a big school, but not necessarily what makes you into a great musician. I think that one of the things that I want to talk to you today is about tone production on the cello and also facility on the thumb positions. Sometimes we feel very comfortable with playing the cello from the first to the fourth positions, and then we go up here and feel tight. It happened to me when I was younger, so in a way I think it's easier for me to teach that because I had to get around. Most of our repertoire needs to go up here, and we have to be comfortable with that. So I would like to start talking about how to feel comfortable in thumb position. First of all, we have to have the same feeling as we have in the neck positions when we go up here. Many times we turn around the wrist, we bring it back, which is not good. That means that the arm is stopping when we go up. So the feeling of the hand needs to be the same. So a little nice exercise is to glide up and down the string, and then you do that, but you lift the fourth finger as you get to the upper register, and then bring it back. And you do a little bit of that in each string every day, just so you feel you're comfortable moving around the cello. Having that said, it's easier to practice the gliding feeling with harmonic pressure. So if I put my bow on the string, it's really not going to sound much. It's just... And then you get to notice also that you don't need too much pressure to play. Because if I add a little bit, it's already there. Then, a wonderful exercise that helped me a lot is the one finger scale. So let's say, especially with the third finger, because what I want to feel is that when I pass these positions, my wrist doesn't bend backwards, but I still keep the movement of the arm. That means that this feeling and the finger are the same. They're not two different feelings. Sometimes we bring too much down here and then go up here, or we move the easiest when the feeling is the same. And then I think we need to practice a lot coming from this part of the cello to this one. Quite a few times in a nice round motion every day. We can practice just jumping octaves or shifting into octaves. Or the thing is that we don't do that often in the early years of our learning of the cello. So we tend to feel like we can play here, but then whatever comes up here, it's a little scary. So whatever we feel like it's not our strongest point, we just emphasize in daily practicing. So I love starting my day with a little exercise from Bonnie Hampton, who was a superb cellist, and I was lucky enough to play at her first masterclass at Juilliard. And those are like vocal exercises that, like vocal warm-ups that singers do early in the morning. So octave, but then see the hand is not tight, but it's set. So whenever we play up here, we have to know where the thumb is. Sometimes we move just to the finger and get tight. The idea is we know exactly where the thumb is, and basically 95% of the time it's an octave relation with the thumb and third finger. So this is why it's so nice, Bonnie Hampton's exercise, because we always shift to the octave. So the idea is that you go a half step up every time. It's also nice to practice a little bit with an appoggiatura at the thumb. So if I'm starting with the D, because this will basically be at an octave position. The other thing that I like very much about Bonnie Hampton's exercise is that you go first to the third finger. And generally in thumb position, as my dear teacher Joe Krosnick used to say, you balance to the last finger that is going to play. So many times when people learn thumb position, they start with a regular scale and they go with the wrist going back too much, and then it's uncomfortable. But if you start backwards, look, it's already there. So the idea is that the finger is ready to play, while here it's not really. So basically, another great advice that Joe Krosnick used to give us was first and second finger will take care of themselves, third will not. We have to take extra care of third finger. So, and continuous practicing of moving, shifting up those regions. And a curious story about Mr. Parizeau. He told me that, I guess for the first year of his cello lessons, his stepfather only taught him thumb position. He wasn't allowed to come back. So thumb position was always the easiest for him. then you start to realize that thumb position is not harder. It's just that we don't play it enough. So if we play it enough in thumb position, we could be more fluent about it. And let's say you spend the first 2 or 3 years only playing here, and then we start going up here. It's too late, right? So then we have the wonderful Grutzmacher exercises, volume 2, which are all in thumb position. And we need to spend a lot of our time going up here to feel as comfortable as we feel in here. So basically, just summarizing, it's right balance of the hand, which comes from being in line with the elbow and the hand. So you avoid a crooked wrist in the first place, right? And then getting the feeling that if you play here in the first position or if you're here, the feeling of the hand is the same. The alignment of the arm will not change a lot. It will not do this, or it will not go in this direction. And then I just want to talk a little bit about vibrato before we move to the sound issue. I think my vibrato as an arm movement and not a rotation of the wrist. I think you can control it much better if you do this kind of movement, and that's the same kind of movement that we're going to talk a little bit about on the bow hand, which is the Detaché. It's basically the same motion where you have an independence of the forearm moving up and down. So that doesn't mean that the finger is going to slide on the string. The finger stays on the string, but the movement is not a rotation movement. You never go above the note when you vibrate. In my opinion, you just stay on this region of the notes, not here. So, yeah, you stay up here, not here. And ideally, when you, let's say, when you vibrate third finger up here in the thumb position, 1 and 2 will move like this. So it's not that, but same thing. And see, I have to, if I play 3, 2, 1, I have to rebalance the hand for 3, so it's in the right playing position. Otherwise, it's just going to start to get in that same trouble that we were talking about, and I'll start nailing my fingers down. So, talking about the relaxed motion of the vibrato, we always practice slow vibrato. Because it's harder to control, and if you can control it, you can move faster. So, if you can do that, you can do this. But if you start from a tight motion, and generally the tight vibrato comes from being rigid in this part of the arm. See, it's like a grabbing feeling. Then you can't do much else. So releasing is very important. I really believe in releasing and rebound. So as you reach the string, you allow the hand to rebound. Same thing with the right hand we're going to talk about. But if I'm nailed down, I can't really move. And even the fourth finger, which is our weakest generally, we want to feel like the other fingers are moving up and down the string. And if I'm correctly balanced, my fingertip will be relaxed, and my joints will do a little motion. They will be flexible. If I'm tight with my vibrato, my joints don't move. But if I'm relaxed, and when I'm relaxed, I feel like I have to do very little motion. No matter with which finger. But if I'm correctly aligned with the arm, fourth finger, third, see, second's a little bit more slanted backwards, so is first finger when you vibrate. Here I would just go over the note, right? So when the feeling is right, you feel that you don't need a lot of movements. No, it's there. And I also like, this is my personal taste, I like wider vibrato on the C string. Because I think in a hall it just sounds bigger. With exceptions, of course. But yeah, so summarizing, vibrato is generally an arm motion. And sometimes, yeah, the wrist comes in. If you want a really concise and short, narrow vibrato, yeah, the wrist comes in. But generally, it's a healthy arm motion. Then, I would like to talk a little bit about sound production. Because, you know, all these subjects are just intertwined in the end. And that's the problem with the technique that I was talking in the beginning. That if we separate too much the technique from the music, it makes no sense. So, for the sound production, I like to have a nice line with my arm, so it's not really up here, or this isn't relaxed either. So lines are always better, and of course we are pronated most of the times in relation to the stick, because that's the way to bring the weight to the stick. If I'm here, it might look like my elbow is relaxed, but my weight is not in the correct placement of the stick. Now, I want to start talking about Detaché, because for cellists it's a challenge. For violinists it's much easier, see, because of their position. At the cello, we tend to go back with the elbow and get tight. But we have to be able to open the arm quite easily. So the motion for the Detaché is a scrubbing motion, like you're scrubbing your sink. That's the feeling. And for a while, we have to work on how to isolate this movement, because we tend, even after we understand it, we tend to do with a backwards motion of the arm, which doesn't help much. So, what the Detaché gives us is the ability to play in the upper half of the bow, which is impossible without it. So what happens is that you see many times that for violinists it's easier to play on the upper half of the bow, and they have to work at the frog. In the cello, the frog is pretty heavy. You don't have to do much. But we do have to work on the upper third of the bow. And these are two magical points of the bow: balance point, which is the lower third of the bow basically, and then this one here, which sings very well on the cello, and many times we don't use it. So, practice tip is that Mr. Parizeau used to say quite a lot, don't practice, experiment. Sometimes we play a passage and then we repeat it the same way many times, but we're not really experimenting. And we have to be creative as artists, because, you know, those wonderful pedagogues like Starker, Parizeau, Krosnick, you name it, they are wonderful, but they solve their problems in their ways, and we have to translate their ideas to our bodies, which is not that easy. So let's say if we are learning how to play on this region of the bow, we have to make sure that this is happening and that we can do it without sort of a U motion when we need it. Because we might need the U motion at some points, but also. And then I'm talking about the opening of the elbow, which is a singing feeling for the bow. And I have a funny expression that I use with my students, which is sing from your elbow. So that means that whenever you're playing a legato passage, the elbow feels like it's drawing the sound, not going up. I don't like that feeling very much. And of course, then it's individual characteristics. I have heavy arms. If I go like that, I squeeze the sound. So I have to be always very careful. But singing from the elbow means drawing the bow without squeezing. But then, of course, knowledge of the wrist is quite important. In my way of thinking, I use lots of collé. I did lots of practice of collé with my violin colleagues, and it helps me with my bow changes. I use the wrist as a passive motion, never as active, but passive. It's part of the arm, but I don't start the motion from the wrist, up or down, no. It just goes with the arm. Now the collé motion, which is a very interesting exercise drawn from violin technique. It's basically moving the bow up and down without using lateral motion of the hand or of the wrist. So basically, it's as if you're gonna lift the bow from the string using only your fingers. And see, that motion is already, this one that I'm doing here, is already the up bow, which is that. And the down bow is the opposite. And it's a very nice exercise to isolate this joint here. We were talking about learning how to isolate in the brain this joint here. Now we are talking on learning about how do we isolate that joint. We use that for bow change because we can slow down the bow as much as we want with sort of a collé motion here. So we're flexible. And then another thing that my teacher Joe Krosnick used to say quite a lot is to get the feeling of the tripod in the bow. So it's not only first finger, but there is we are pronated, but we have a nice feeling with third and fourth fingers also. And then the thumb just touches lightly the bow and says, I'm here. So we can get some resonance within the hand. The sound, the resonance has to feel inside of your arm. If you're grabbing, you can't really, but if you have a stable tripod without pushing too hard, you can feel like the bow has resonance inside of the hand. Okay, then you might say you're getting too specific about motions here, and all the bow strokes are combinations of these kinds of control. It's nice that we isolate those things, but then they have to make sense in real playing. Otherwise, it's no use. So if I'm connecting sounds, I like my collé to be there. But so if I'm too much on the first finger and try to relax the wrist, my connection is not as good as if I really have a nice control of 3 and 4 on my bow. And we developed that. A nice exercise that you might know is going, you pull here and you push with the other hand. So you go in different directions, but you don't allow the hand to move outside of the bow. You just stay there. Now, The bow has basically two axes, and one is vertical and the other one is horizontal. And too many times we don't feel correctly the vertical axis of the bow because it's not really here, but instead it's as if somebody's making a little resistance on your bow all the time. So a little exercise which I like a lot is this one. Of resistance in the bow, so it's not over the string. And it might be a little bit hard to hear in a video, but dynamics and density of sound are two different things. And we can play a very dense pianissimo, or we can play almost zero density pianissimo also, which is a different color. But we have to control it and know that not necessarily because it's pianissimo that it's gonna feel like that, because sometimes the music requires you that feeling of intensity. So, and above all, the thing that brings everything together is breathing. So I spoke a little bit about left hand, of rebound, of how to feel comfortable up here. I spoke a little bit about comfort in the bow arm, be it by being able to open and close the forearm or using a nice collé motion without too much wrist, but controlled wrist, just as a reflex of the movement. But then we have to put everything together. And then a very funny exercise that I learned from Ole Akahoshi, who taught with Mr. Parizeau at Yale many years, was to control the breathing. You make a funny sound like so basically, you can play an open string, and this is nice because you hear the sound of your breathing all the way through. Sometimes you breathe out and you just spend everything in the very beginning. There's nowhere to go here. And I need my voice when I play. Yeah, the bow is a kind of voice here. So if I am in control, then I have to forget about all the collé I practice, all the opening here, or all the comfort that I'm looking for here, and breathe well. So remember that little exercise from Bonnie Hampton. So we can practice with breathing. So that means I'm gonna inhale for 2 beats and exhale for 2 beats. Or the opposite, I inhale first. Exercises where I can practice many things at the same time. Even though now I'm focusing on breathing, I'm still working somehow on this and on connecting my sound as we spoke, opening and closing of the elbow and here. But my main goal now is controlling the breathing. So I can do one. Now I can do every 2 notes. harder for us because we tend to inhale and exhale every time we change bows. And so if I do in one breath, and then in one breath, you see the breathing sort of unifies your playing. If we know how we breathe, the left hand, the good sound and the facility of the right hand and the facility of the left hand comes together. And I think this is a very important issue when we play. Otherwise, we might get the little topics together, but they just don't connect. And the breathing is always the answer for connecting the sounds or connecting the music. Even the way we breathe before we play will tell the audience how we sound, because I can breathe deeply or I can breathe short, and it's a different way of playing. It's a different character altogether. So these are some thoughts about things that helped me quite a lot. But one last thought that I want to share with you from a wonderful teacher that I had, Nancy Bidlack. She was with her for the first time I heard about circles in cello playing. So I remember working with her quite a lot and I'm sure your teachers have worked that with you, that position change is never a straight motion, but you have a little circle which releases the pressure. This is a big technical thing that I remember from working with her, but also she developed an ability for the ears and for the body, which was, I remember that I was comfortable vibrating here and didn't feel as good in here. And she said, you know, it's the same arm, same fingers. If you can do here, you can do here also. You're doing something differently in this position. So this was a great lesson that I learned from her. So let's say if you can play spiccato here, there's no reason why you can't be playing here or in this region here. So if your sound is good in this part, it means that here it should be also. But sometimes we change too much the position, or as you progress in cello playing, sometimes the changes are very subtle, but still they make a big difference. Thank you all for watching. The cello is a wonderful journey, and I can't wait to join you in our Zoom session very soon.